And honestly, what started as excitement around women's basketball is starting to feel personal now. Because fans believe certain stars are getting protected, while others are being unfairly targeted. Every interview becomes drama. Every headline starts another war online. And the worst part? The media keeps making the divide even bigger. Now, the WNBA feels stuck in a situation they may not even control anymore. Because this doesn't feel like normal sports drama now, this feels like the internet turning women's basketball into a full-blown culture war. For a while now, something around the WNBA has felt different. Not just on the court, but everywhere around it. And the strange part is nobody really says it out loud. Not the media, not the league. And even some players avoid the conversation completely. But fans online, they are noticing everything. And that's where this story really begins. Because when you look closely at women's basketball right now, it doesn't feel like just sports anymore. It feels like something is shifting every single week. One moment, everything looks normal. Highlights, celebrations, big performances. But then, the entire internet is arguing about something completely different. And somehow it always circles back to the same feeling. Something is off. And that feeling gets stronger when you realize how fast narratives are changing. One player gets praised in the morning, questioned in the evening, and debated all night online. Another player goes viral for a highlight, but the conversation instantly turns into controversy instead of celebration. And the weirdest part? The games themselves are not even the main focus anymore. The reaction to the games is becoming the real story. And honestly, that shift changes everything. Because inside the league, everything still looks normal on the surface. Games are being played. Arenas are filling up. Attention is growing. But underneath all of that, there is a different energy building. Fans are splitting into groups. Discussions are turning into arguments. And every small moment starts feeling heavier than it should. And this is where things start getting uncomfortable. Because once a league reaches this level of attention, nothing stays simple anymore. Every decision gets analyzed. Every reaction gets clipped. Every quote becomes a headline. And suddenly, players are not just athletes anymore. They become symbols of opinions, of sides, of narratives they never asked to represent. And that's exactly what the internet is reacting to right now. Because if you scroll through social media, you will notice something fast. People are not just talking about basketball anymore. They are talking about fairness, attention, media coverage, favoritism, respect, and who is getting it and who isn't. And once that conversation starts, it never stays calm for long. It builds slowly at first. A comment here, a clip there, a viral take. But then it escalates. And suddenly, the entire conversation around the league feels heavier than the game itself. And what makes it even more intense is how emotional fans are becoming. Because this is no longer just about stats. It's about perception. It's about spotlight. It's about who trends and who gets ignored. And the internet doesn't forget anything. Every game becomes evidence for someone's argument. And slowly that creates tension, not just between fans, but between narratives. Because one side sees growth. They see success. They see the league finally getting attention it deserves. But the other side feels something different. They feel imbalance. They feel frustration. They feel like certain stories are being pushed louder than others. And both sides are getting louder. And when both sides get louder, the sport stops feeling simple. Because now every highlight has meaning. Every viral moment becomes a debate. Every player becomes a comparison. And that pressure, it doesn't stay online. It leaks into everything. And that's when the real problem starts forming. Because inside all this noise, the actual basketball is still happening. Players are still performing at the highest level, but the conversation around the game is starting to overpower the game itself. And that creates a strange imbalance, because when attention gets too big, expectations get even bigger. And once expectations rise, every small moment becomes a controversy. A missed shot, a reaction, a substitution. Everything gets magnified. And fans are not imagining it anymore. They are reacting to it in real time. Because now it feels like the WNBA is not just growing, it is transforming under pressure. and nobody is fully sure yet what it is transforming into. And that uncertainty is exactly why the internet cannot stop talking about it. Because deep down, everyone is trying to understand the same thing. Is this the biggest rise in women's basketball history? Or is something inside the league slowly becoming uncontrollable? In a way nobody expected? Because once that question enters the conversation, it doesn't leave. It spreads. Quietly at first, then all at once. And the next thing you notice? The tone around the WNBA starts changing. Not in headlines, but in how people talk about it. Because now every discussion has weight behind it. Every opinion feels like a debate. Every clip feels like evidence. And every player feels like they're being placed inside a narrative they didn't choose. And that's where the pressure starts to build. Not from the games, but from everything surrounding them. Because attention is not just growth. Attention is expectation. And expectation changes how everything is interpreted. A normal performance doesn't stay normal anymore. It becomes expected. And once something becomes expected, it stops being appreciated. It starts being measured. And that shift is subtle, but dangerous. Because fans don't even realize when it happens. One day they are amazed by a performance, and the next day, they are asking why it wasn't even better. And this is where social media amplifies everything. Because now every possession is clipped. Every reaction is frozen. Every quote is separated from context and turned into something sharper than it was meant to be. A single highlight becomes a debate. A single mistake becomes a discussion thread. And a single opinion can split the entire fan base. And inside all of that noise, players are still just playing basketball. But the world around them is no longer just watching. It's interpreting, analyzing, judging, rebuilding meaning out of every moment. And slowly, that starts to affect how the league feels from the inside. Because even silence is now interpreted. A calm reaction becomes too calm. An emotional reaction becomes too much. A confident moment becomes arrogance to some, and star power to others. Everything becomes dual meaning. Nothing stays neutral anymore. And that's the point where pressure becomes unavoidable. Because when every action has two interpretations, you can never fully win the narrative. You can only survive it. And that's exactly what's happening right now. You can see it in how fast conversations flip. One night a player is celebrated as the future. Next night they are questioned for consistency. And it doesn't even take a bad game anymore. Sometimes it just takes a viral clip or a single moment taken out of context. And suddenly the entire conversation shifts direction. And that shift is what fans are starting to feel. Not as confusion, but as intensity. Because it never stops moving. It never settles. It keeps evolving every day. And the league becomes something different because of it. Not just a sports league, but a constant conversation. A 24/7 debate cycle. Where basketball is only the starting point, and everything else is built on top of it. And that's where the tension becomes real. Because players don't exist in isolation anymore. They exist inside narratives. Some are labeled as rising stars, some as controversial figures, some as underrated, some as overhyped. And once those labels stick, they start shaping how everything they do is viewed, even before the game begins. And that creates a strange reality, because now performance is not judged in isolation. It is judged against expectation, reputation, and online perception. And that makes every game heavier than the last. Not because the game changed, but because the meaning around it did. And fans can feel it too. That's why discussions online never really end anymore. They just shift form, from post to post, from clip to clip, from debate to debate. And underneath all of it, there is still the same unanswered question growing louder in the background. Is this just what happens when a league grows this fast? Or is something deeper happening? Something where attention itself is starting to reshape the sport in real time? And the longer you watch, the harder it becomes to ignore. Because now it doesn't feel like a phase anymore. It feels like a transformation. And nobody is sure where it stops. Because at some point, this shift stops being just a feeling and it becomes visible. You start seeing it in real time, on every platform, under every clip, in every comment section. And suddenly, the WNBA isn't just being watched anymore. It's being divided, quietly at first, but clearly, because now every moment has two reactions. Not one, not neutral, two completely different interpretations of the same play. And that's where the split begins to form, because the same highlight can mean completely different things depending on who is watching. To some people, it's greatness. To others, it's overrated. To some, it's confidence. To others, it's controversy. And neither side feels wrong in their own eyes. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because when both perspectives feel valid, the argument never ends. It only grows. And this is where the internet takes over the conversation completely. Because now it's not just fans reacting to games. It's fans reacting to each other, debating, clipping, quoting, reposting, reframing, until the original moment almost disappears. And what remains is the argument around it. And somewhere inside that cycle, players begin to feel something changing. Not directly, not openly, but in the atmosphere around them. Because now every performance carries invisible weight. Every run gets compared instantly. Every mistake gets stored. And every success gets questioned just a little more than before. And the strange part? The game is still the same. Same court, same rules, same effort. But the interpretation of it is completely different now. And that difference is what fans are feeling too. Because even casual viewers can sense it. The energy online is different. Comments are faster. Opinions are sharper. Reactions are more emotional. And everything feels like it escalates too quickly. A normal highlight doesn't stay normal. It becomes a statement. A statement becomes a debate. And a debate becomes a full narrative war. And this cycle never really resets. It just repeats, stronger every time. And that's when something new starts happening. Because instead of focusing on the game, people start focusing on who is being talked about more. Who is trending? Who is getting coverage? Who is being pushed by media? Who is being ignored despite performance? And suddenly, the conversation is no longer about basketball alone. It's about attention itself. And that's where the emotional divide becomes even deeper. Because one group believes this is the natural evolution of the sport. That more attention means more discussion. More debate means more growth. More visibility means success. But the other group sees something else. They see imbalance. They see inconsistency. They see certain names being amplified, while others stay in the background despite strong performances. And both sides start building their own version of reality. And both versions spread fast. And once that happens, there is no single narrative anymore. There are multiple, all existing at the same time, all competing for attention. And that creates something the league has never dealt with at this scale before. Because now every game is not just a game. It's a reference point, a piece of evidence, a fuel source for ongoing debates. And that pressure doesn't stay online anymore. It starts influencing how everything is perceived everywhere else. Sports shows, analysis clips, fan discussions, even casual conversations. And slowly, the league starts feeling like it is being pulled in different directions at once. Because there is no longer one shared understanding of what is happening. Only interpretations. And interpretations never fully agree. And that's where the tension peaks again. Because now even success doesn't feel unified. A big performance doesn't create one reaction. It creates multiple arguments at the same time. And instead of bringing people together, it pushes them further apart. And the longer this continues, the more the question changes. Because now it's not just about whether the league is growing, or whether it's getting attention, or whether stars are rising. The question becomes something heavier, something harder to answer. Is this level of attention building the WNBA into something bigger than ever before? Or is it slowly turning the conversation around it into something it can no longer control? And that question is exactly where everything starts to feel uncertain. Because nobody is fully sure anymore whether this is evolution or escalation. And that's why the story is still unfolding, right in front of everyone. And at this point, the conversation is no longer just about basketball. It's about everything built around it: attention, pressure, narratives, and the way a league changes when the whole world starts watching it differently. Because what started as highlights slowly turned into discussions. And what turned into discussions eventually became debates that never fully end. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just what is happening on the court, but what is happening around it. Because the WNBA isn't standing still anymore. It's evolving in real time, under pressure, under spotlight, under constant interpretation. And whether you see that as growth or something more complicated depends on how closely you've been paying attention. But one thing is clear: this moment in women's basketball is not normal. It's different, and it's only getting louder. So now the real question is not just what happens next, but what people choose to focus on next. Because every clip, every game, every performance adds another layer to this ongoing story. And the story is still being written.
Right now.
In real time.
So, I want to ask you something.
Do you think this is the biggest rise in women's basketball history? A new era being built in front of us? Or do you think the pressure of all this attention is starting to change the sport in a way nobody fully expected? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation isn't ending here. It's just getting started. And if you want more breakdowns like this, make sure you subscribe, because the next story might change